Hi, I'm Kamina Lyle from the Dart Centre Asia Pacific. We are a regional collaboration of journalists, researchers and health professionals dedicated to press freedom and quality journalism through trauma-informed reporting. The Dart Centre is a project of the Columbia University Journalism School and has been operating for over 20 years. This is our podcast where we talk to news media folk about the craft of journalism in this time of massive change and challenge. We want to know how our colleagues are taking care of themselves, their sources and their stories. So we're delighted to have Lee Chong Ae with us here tonight. Chong Ae is a senior journalist of the Seoul Broadcasting System, one of the 3 major broadcasting stations in Korea. She was the first female investigative journalist for the news magazine program News Pursuit. She has won 21 awards, including Reporter of the Year from the Journalist Association of Korea and the Korean Broadcasting Grand Prize. She was a 2011 Dart Asia Fellow and a 2012-13 Newman Fellow at Harvard University. She is now team leader for the SBS Forum, which is looking at medium to long-term agendas for our society. And I didn't actually know anything about the SBS Forum. I looked it up and it's fascinating. It really is a way to kind of innovate, I guess, in bringing journalism to some of these kind of structural issues in society. So welcome to In 10, and we've only got 10 minutes allegedly, though I'm terrible and tend to go over. But I want to start by saying, how has, the whole coronavirus COVID-19 impacted you, your team, your news reporting, your newsroom in Korea?
If I start with our team,
yeah.
Until May, all of our team members had to stay home. So they were working at home, and only I was the one to be in the office. So we were communicating with the Zoom live like this, like you. And even though, because that we were doing a lot of the forums that we got up to now was talking about technology and how things could make things better. So we were hoping, even though that we're apart, that technology will help us to do things in a normal way. But we noticed that by doing it, actually not having people there to have small talks were very difficult. So doing the meeting itself wasn't a problem, but to make the brainstorming really go, you have to have the small talks ahead in the office that normally we will just chat with the people next to you, or maybe at lunchtime we will be chatting. And it's those small talks that we talked before actually really made the difference. And I think it was the first time we realized that. So now everybody's back to the office, and we're saying that before we didn't notice it so much, but small talks actually were the more valuable talks that we should have had. And at that time, I was getting some ideas from the Dart Center. Actually, I heard that you were having like happy hours on Friday afternoons, and we were thinking, oh, something like that is something we should be doing, because not just connecting when you have something to say or the official meetings, but small talks are actually maybe the more important communication, even when it comes to work process or the progress. So that was a kind of an interesting point from our team point of view. From our news point of view, I think it was the first time we really got to think about the health of the journalists, because we had a lot of other disasters that we went through, but this time the journalists and going out and meeting the people could actually be the super spreader. And knowing that, and also fearing about that, when you're also have to cover the story, because that we want to tell what's happening and we want to aware people what to do, having that kind of 2 angles of it, I think it made our newsroom to really think about what it means to have a healthy journalist, and what's our boundaries. So for instance, our team has medical doctor who's a brain surgeon who covers medical stories. But with him, our newsroom really cooperate to see like how are we going to make this happen when we go out, like what has to be prepared, how far are you going, where can you go, where you can't go, what even like using a term, like what term is all right to use but what term we shouldn't be using, what are we going to call this virus, how are we going to call this virus. And a lot of this negotiation was really a more diverse than before. And I think that was a very interesting point. And also, it's not like what we should do, but what we should not do was talked more. And I think it was first time that we really talked in that frame to see what we shouldn't be doing. And even this is so important, and we should be covering what is the part that is too dangerous, that covering might be more dangerous than not covering. And having that being talked in our newsroom, I thought was a very interesting trend.
And do you think that that's likely to kind of expand beyond that kind of pure medical risk that that the COVID-19 presents? Do you think that that kind of will now translate into, well, what else shouldn't we be doing, and what other risks are we exposing journalists to, you know, along the lines that you know, and that the Dart Centre is very passionate about educating newsrooms about the impact of trauma, etc.
Yeah, I hope it will. Because I think that for the first time we're really thinking in a way that we haven't thought before, and so that if we're thinking, if people don't know about this virus, it is too dangerous to cover. If you're thinking in that terms, then if you don't know about trauma, you shouldn't be dealing with traumatic people. So if you have this one phrase that people get used to and kind of be aware of, then I think in other cases too, this awareness will come even maybe naturally, which they haven't thought before. So in that way, I think it's very important. And also that before we were hoping like this will be, maybe after a few months, it will be a post-corona or post-COVID-19 stage. But now we're talking more about maybe is with COVID-19 stage instead of post-COVID-19 stage. So if we are going to maybe have to live with this kind of pandemics, and it might be coming more often, then the way how we covered the stories or how we dealt with people related to journalism might have to totally all change too, the standards or the values or whatnot. And I think it's first time we're starting to thinking in that way. That also is kind of very interesting.
Chong Ae, it sounds like these conversations are quite sophisticated at SBS. That there's some, you know, good leadership or some strong leadership about thinking this through. And I know also COVID it's a pretty compelling threat. So you do have to respond to it, and everyone has had to respond to it. Do you think that this is also playing out in other newsrooms across Korea? Are these same conversations right across the industry now?
Yeah, because in April, that not just our company, but the Journalists Association of Korea and the Broadcasting Journalists Association and the Korea Science Journalists Association gathered together and came up with a guideline, what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing. And if you see that they talk about that it is important to be like based on science, so that to don't like just assume what this is, but to write the article based with facts. And also, as I was saying, that journalists could be a spreader. So you have to have a boundary and be very careful how you're approaching it. And also that to protect the people who is affected and their family. So don't pinpoint them, or be very careful how you're dealing about these people. And for instance, to don't exaggerate, don't make it more scary or more fearful than you have to, or don't sensationalize it, or that kind of things came out from that guideline. And actually, after it came out there, our medical doctor reporter put that on our website, and everybody was reading it. And so even that in our team, usually I don't cover daily news, and it's more mid and long-term agendas, but when we were writing things, we were looking at the guideline and trying to see, oh, this word shouldn't be used, this is a word maybe we could use it. So we are kind of using it as a resource, and I think that really did help. And also I think and from Korea's point of view, before this whole ferry disaster, everything went so bad, and so everybody's so aware of that we have to be more careful. And there are some things we're still maybe doing not right, but I think that we have the bigger awareness that we can't do it, we can't ruin it so bad, we can't like victimize the victims again, or and also I think even our government learned the lesson that we have to be more open about everything, and be more what you call it, try things right on, the very timely. And I think we did learn a lot of these lessons from this whole ferry disaster, covering this whole
It's
ferry
interesting
disaster.
you bring up the Sewell ferry disaster, which for those people who might be watching who don't remember was a terrible tragedy where lots of children drowned, and adults also, but a lot of school children. And the media came under a lot of criticism for approach to the victims and the families and what have you. And that was a very seminal period, or a very sort of acute period for Korean journalists generally. And I think there's a lot of soul searching was done. I'm interested in, and I hear what you're saying about the evolution of the ethics, I guess, of covering trauma and interviewing people. I'm also interested in that other side, Chong Ae, around, and also how it relates to COVID, of how journalists are looking after themselves, caring for themselves and protecting themselves in this environment. Because that was a little bit of the missing piece in the Sewell ferry disaster. The journalists became the bad people. Whereas in fact, you know, yes, they may have made some poor decisions, but it was a terribly stressful time for everyone concerned. So how has that changed, do you think, and how is COVID contributing to teaching journalists to look after themselves?
I think this time, for instance, the Broadcasting Journalists Association, where we had the program together with the DART Asia Center last year, that when this COVID happened and they were writing articles about it, that they kind of emphasized a few chapters has to be about trauma. And so that the reporters who actually went to the more dangerous places to cover, like for instance, Daegu, that they were contacting those reporters and asking what they did differently, or what did they feel, what did they try to do differently to overcome it as a journalist. And some of these articles were in the magazine of the Broadcasting Journalists Association, the articles, and also I don't know if it's directly related to this or not, but one of the investigative reporting only media, Newstapa, recently called me saying they wanted to have a journalism and trauma training for their newsroom. And it's first time that any news company as a whole wanted their more than half of their journalists to go through this training program. So I connected them to the Broadcasting Reporters Association, and next week we're having a three afternoon day training that will be happening. And I think this kind of things that they're being aware of it, and maybe they don't know what to do yet, but they're realizing their reporters really need this kind of training or some kind of help. So they're trying to find what's possible. And I think this is not what we used to see before. So we're really excited.
I have no doubt whatsoever that those reporters and everybody else that comes into contact with you are in good hands. You're an amazing ambassador for journalism and for Korea. Thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for all the really important work that you do. Thank you again for being with us here today.
Thank you.